Hello, this is Lino Tadros, and in this video I'll show you how to assign a new icon to your widget in MVC for Sitefinity. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, I'm in my home page right now. As you can see on the right side, there are all these MVC widgets. And you'll notice there is a logo right next to the name of the widget itself for blogs, blog posts, all of them. There is actually two images, believe it or not. There is one in the background there, it has the light blue. And then there is this small little image that the MVC, this is just something extra as a CSS class associated with this icon that actually will be put at the bottom right of every single one if you include the MVC icon as well. But these are two different images, both associated in the same real estate. And by the way, the real estate is 50 pixel by 30 pixels. You have to remember these numbers because when you issue different size of image, Sitefinity might have a hard time figuring out how to display that in that small area. So it's 50 by 30 pixel that you need to do for your icon. Also, all of these icons are available in the web resource, AXD file. And there is a way, for instance, to choose a name. And while all these images are loaded in the back end, you can use them for your own widget as well. Because when you create a brand new widget and you don't assign one, of course, you get a default image, and that image is just a dotted rectangle, blue rectangle inside of the white background. I'll show you, for instance, how I mean by that. I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio. Let's go ahead and create a brand new widget. We'll say add. We'll go to Sitefinity and we'll create a widget right there. And let me bring in the dialog from another monitor. And in here, we'll call it, for instance, the Lino widget, okay? There you go, we'll say, go for it. All right, so now that will create me, of course, a controller under MVC. There will be the Lino controller, and in the models we'll have the Lino model, and in the reviews we'll have the Lino folder that will contain the view index.cshtml. The one thing I want to concentrate on in this video is to go to the Lino controller right there. And you'll notice the control toolbox item at the top, which you have almost 7 or 8 different attributes that you can pass. The most important ones, of course, are the name. Let me go ahead and change it, for instance, just to Lino, and the title will be Lino. And let's go ahead and put it fine in the section name called custom widgets. You can call it whatever you want as well. But there is another one. If I put a comma in here, notice the help window in here tells you there is something called CsClass right there. And this CSS class will be the icon associated with that widget. So you need to create a CSS class somewhere, and you'll need to associate a brand new class that has a background, and maybe you can actually input a base64 image or point to a CSS or a PNG or a JPEG somewhere in a folder. So let's go ahead and do that. For instance, let's go ahead and say CSS class equals, and I'm okay calling it Lino, lowercase l, there you go. And then we go, we're gonna save this. Of course, for this to work, I need to go somewhere. You can create any folder you want. We'll say, let's go ahead and create a new folder in here. We'll make it easy enough. We'll call it CSS, alrighty? And in the CSS folder, let's go ahead and create a brand new style sheet, CSS file. You can call it anything you want. I'm gonna call it main, for instance. And inside of this main, what I really need to do is to include my class, which remember I called it Lino, so it will need to be called .Lino. And then I will be pointing in here. Let me go up once. All right, so that is the class called Lino with the lowercase l. The property or the attribute is called background, and I'm going to be pointing to CSS, which is at the root. And the name of my file, I called it, for instance, Lino TV 50 by 30.png. Don't forget the following: no repeat, 0 pixel, and pound important to make sure nothing actually will override that coming in directly from Sitefinity itself. So the last part is very important when you create a CSS background image for your widgets inside of Sitefinity itself. The only thing left for me is to go ahead and find on my hard drive this Lino TV 50 by 30 PNG. I'm going to say right click on the CSS. I will say add, and we'll say existing item. Let's go to my pictures, and I think I have one in here called Lino TV. Let's go down to the L's. There's a lot of funny stuff in here. Alrighty, let's go ahead and find out where is my Lino. There it is, Lino TV. All right. At this point, actually, believe it or not, I'm 90% done. This, if I compile right now, this controller, Lino controller, will get registered, and it will get the Lino in it as well. There is one thing I wanted to show you as well before I go there. If I actually say CSS class equals to Lino, that will only bring up the Lino TV. If I want this small little MVC in blue at the corner, there is more I need to pass as a secondary CSS class right after Lino as well. And sometimes you can't find really what the name is, or you misspell it or whatever. So I'll show you a neat trick that you can actually do. So if you go to any page here that in the background that has the widgets, go ahead and push F12 in Chrome or Firefox or whatever you'd like, and click on the elements in here on the side, and go to any of these images. And the image actually will cheat a little bit. It will actually tell you, let me go ahead and click on it again. There you go. You see this one has a class called SF card icon space, and then there's this SF MVC icon. I want the second one. All right, so let's copy this guy in here. We'll close this guy. And I'm going to come back and I will leave a space, very important, after Lino, and I'm going to be pasting the SF MVC icon. This will come directly from Sitefinity, but instead of using one of the SF icons built in, I'm going to use Lino for this one. All right, let's go ahead and say save this, and I can go ahead and compile my my widget at this point. And on the first run, it will find out that I don't have anything called Lino installed in the toolbox, so it will register my widget and it will assign a Lino SMVC icon. Both of them will be available. But the problem is, you will notice that only the MVC one will show up when I get back into the application. The Lino will not show up automatically, and I'll show you that as soon as we get back. Let me go ahead and compile this and run it. It might take half a minute or so, and I'll show you that when we get back. All right, and we are back. It compiled, and you'll notice immediately I will have a new section called Custom Widgets. That's the name of the section name I called it. If I open it up, Lino will be available, but you will be very disappointed. There is no Lino TV icon, but the MVC one showed up. You see, that part got resolved. It's the one behind it that the system could not see, so it reverted back to the default, which is the dotted blue line. So the question is like, if this worked, why exactly am I not seeing the Lino TV? Well, if you push F12 on this page as is, and go ahead and click on the selector here on the top left of the debugger, and I'm going to go to the MVC, you will notice that it is pointing to Lino. So it is correct Lino, but if you take a look at the CSS on the side, there will be no Lino anywhere. There will be an SF MVC icon, and it's taking place. That's why I can see the blue part, but Lino is nowhere anywhere in here. That means Lino did not load. That's because the main.css did not load either. So when this happens, usually you would like to do that in your template, for instance. So all the pages that are going to be using this template will load. At least you will know that the CSS loaded in the back end based on the template itself. There's other ways to do it as well. You can embed the base64 right inside of your of the DLL and get to it this way. There is a lot of other ways to do it, especially when you have an external assembly that you're compiling. There is a way, of course, to use the property assembly info to make sure that that image is available in the resources of that DLL or assembly as well. But for right now, the easiest way to do it is to go back in here. We will open up the template this comes from. Let's go ahead all the way to design, all the way at the top, and we'll say page templates. And notice there is one page based on this first template. Let's open it up. And I'm going to go ahead and add my main.css. We'll go to scripts and styles. That is my CSS. You can put it anywhere. It doesn't really matter. It's non-visual. I want to make sure it goes all the way to the top for the header. And I'm going to say link to a CSS file. And you will notice we have our CSS folder. And there is my main CSS that has the .lino class that has the background URL. And we'll say done selecting, and we are done. Now let's go ahead and publish this guy. And let's go back to our page, and hopefully this time everything will be loaded correctly. So now when I open up the home page, I am guaranteed now that the template is being loaded, have that CSS loaded inside of it as well, as you can see. So hopefully now when I go to the custom widgets, notice the Lino TV is showing up in the back, and the MVC to remind me that this is not a web form, this is an MVC widgets in here, and I can drag and drop it and put it in here, and everything will be working with my message, which is the default property coming in from the CLI. Hopefully this was easy enough to understand how you can associate a specific image or a logo. It has to be 50 by 30, like I said. Have a background attribute for the class itself, and don't forget to add the main.css or whatever CSS file you called it on all your templates that you would like this to show up in. And if it doesn't, it might be a caching issue. You might need to do a Shift F5 on your keyboard to make sure You get rid of the cache to make sure you see it, and so on. Another thing actually you might be interested in, and very important note by the way, sometimes you will register the Lino widget and after the fact you go ahead and add the CSS class, recompile, and try to get it to work, and you will never see this icon. And people say like, I did everything right. I even included the CSS file. And that's because you registered once, okay? So it will never go back and register it again. So for you to see it, you have to go back into the administrator settings, delete the widget completely from the toolbox in the administrator settings, advanced administrator settings. And then you'll have to run again from scratch so that they cannot find it, so it will have to register the whole thing. Once Lino has been registered, changing this CSS class attribute on the widget will not do anything at all. Just remember that as well. So these are a couple of debugging techniques you might actually take a look at. All right, hopefully this was useful to you. Have a great one, and we'll see you again in another Lino TV video real soon.